What if I told you that the ancient Egyptians didn't just believe in an afterlife, they meticulously planned for it like a journey to another world? We're not just talking about a simple burial. We're talking about a process so complex, so sacred, and so fascinating that it has captivated humanity for thousands of years. From the legendary golden mask of Tutankhamun to the mysterious jars that held their vital organs, every single detail was a step towards eternity. What secrets were they trying to preserve? And what can their elaborate rituals teach us about their view of life, death, and the cosmos? Today, we're unwrapping the mysteries of ancient Egyptian mummification and burial rites. We'll journey back in time to discover why they went to such incredible lengths to preserve the human body, transforming it into a vessel for the soul's eternal voyage. Forget what you've seen in the movies. The reality is far more intriguing. Let's start with the most fundamental question: why mummify it all? For the ancient Egyptians, life didn't end with their last breath. They believed in a soul, or rather, several parts of a soul. The two most important were the Ba and the Ka. The Ba was a person's unique character, often depicted as a human-headed bird that could fly between the world of the living and the afterlife. The Ka was the life force, a spiritual twin that needed sustenance even after death. For the soul to reunite and live forever in the field of reeds, their version of paradise, it needed to recognize its physical body. If the body decayed, the soul would be lost, homeless for eternity. So, preservation wasn't just a tradition, it was an absolute necessity for eternal life. Mummification was the answer. So, how did they do it? The process was a masterful blend of science, surgery, and religious ritual, perfected over centuries. It typically took around 70 days and was handled by specialized priests who were part surgeon, part magician. The first, and perhaps most gruesome, step was the removal of the internal organs, which would decay quickly. They'd make an incision on the left side of the abdomen to take out the stomach, liver, lungs, and intestines. But what about the brain? The Egyptians didn't think it was important. They actually used a long, hooked instrument inserted through the nose to pull the brain out, piece by piece. It sounds brutal, but to them, the heart was the center of intelligence and emotion, so it was almost always left inside the body. It was the heart that would be weighed against the feather of Mat, the goddess of truth and justice, in the final judgment. If your heart was heavier than the feather, it meant you lived a life of sin, and your soul would be devoured by a terrifying monster named Amid. If it was lighter, you earned your place in the afterlife. The organs they removed weren't just discarded. They were carefully preserved, washed in palm wine, and packed in special containers called canopic jars. Each jar was protected by one of the four sons of the god Horus. There was a human-headed jar for the liver, a baboon head for the lungs, a jackal head for the stomach, and a falcon head for the intestines. These jars were then placed in the tomb alongside the coffin, ready to be magically reunited with the body in the next life. With the organs removed, the next crucial step was to completely dehydrate the body. The priests would cover it entirely with natron, a natural salt mixture found in the riverbeds of Egypt. It acted as a powerful drying agent, pulling all the moisture from the tissues to prevent bacterial decay. The body would be left buried in a pile of natron for about 40 days, until it was completely desiccated. Once the drying process was complete, the body would be shrunken and leathery, but perfectly preserved. Now it was time to make the body look lifelike again. The priests would wash the body one more time and anoint it with fragrant oils and resins to soften the skin. They would then stuff the body cavity with linen, sawdust, or other materials to restore its original shape. Sometimes they'd even place false eyes made of stone or painted linen into the eye sockets to give the mummy a more serene, watchful appearance. The final stage was the wrapping. This was a long and ceremonial process. The body was meticulously wrapped in hundreds of yards of fine linen bandages. Priests would place magical amulets and charms between the layers of wrappings to offer protection on the dangerous journey to the afterlife. Amulets like the ink, the symbol of life, and the scarab beetle, representing rebirth and regeneration, were common. A prayer or spell would be recited with each layer of wrapping, infusing the mummy with divine power. For royalty like the pharaohs, this process was even more elaborate. The famous boy king Tutankhamun had over 140 amulets wrapped within his bandages. Once fully wrapped, a funerary mask was placed over the head and shoulders of the mummy. For pharaohs, this mask was often made of solid gold and precious stones, intended to be a perfect, idealized portrait of the deceased, ensuring the soul would recognize its home. Now that the mummy was prepared, it was time for the final journey, the funeral procession and burial. This wasn't a somber affair. It was a vibrant, public spectacle. Family, friends, and professional mourners would accompany the mummy to its final resting place, the tomb. These mourners, often women, would wail, tear their clothes, and throw dust on their heads to show their grief. The mummy, inside its nested coffins, was placed on a sled pulled by oxen. But before being sealed in the tomb, one last, vital ceremony had to be performed, the opening of the mouth ritual. A priest, using special tools, would symbolically touch the mummy's mouth, eyes, nose, and ears. This magical act was believed to reanimate the body, allowing the deceased to breathe, see, hear, and speak again in the afterlife. It was the final step in activating the mummy as a vessel for eternity. Inside the tomb, the mummy was placed within a sarcophagus, a large stone container that offered another layer of protection. But the tomb wasn't just a burial chamber. It was a fully furnished house for eternity. It was filled with everything the deceased would need in the afterlife: furniture, clothing, jewelry, food, wine, and even board games. For the wealthy and powerful, their tombs were decorated with incredible paintings and hieroglyphs. These weren't just decorations, they were magical spells and guidebooks. The Book of the Dead, for instance, was a collection of spells to help the deceased navigate the treacherous underworld, overcome monsters, and pass the final judgment. The tomb walls would depict scenes of an idealized life: farming, feasting, and being with family, believing that these images would magically become reality in the field of reeds. Servants were also provided for, not through human sacrifice, but through small figurines called sheptas. The Egyptians believed these statuettes would magically come to life to do any manual labor required of the deceased in the afterlife. Some tombs contain hundreds of them, one for every day of the year. The pyramids of Giza are the most famous tombs in the world, built for pharaohs during the Old Kingdom. Their sheer size and complexity were designed to protect the king's body and treasure, and to serve as a stairway to the heavens. However, their visibility made them prime targets for tomb robbers. Over time, the Egyptians adapted. During the New Kingdom, pharaohs like Tutankhamun and Ramses the Great were buried in secret, underground tombs cut into the cliffs of a remote valley, the Valley of the Kings. The entrances were hidden to protect them from looters. Ironically, Tutankhamun's tomb remained almost perfectly intact, not because it was the most cleverly hidden, but because it was small and relatively insignificant. The entrance was buried under debris from the construction of a later, larger tomb, which inadvertently saved it from discovery for over 3,000 years. The discovery of his tomb by Howard Carter in 1920 gave us an unprecedented, breathtaking glimpse into the wealth and ritual of an ancient Egyptian royal burial. It was a time capsule filled with thousands of artifacts, from his golden throne to his chariots and even his linen underwear. It showed us, in stunning detail, exactly what the Egyptians thought was necessary for a successful trip to the great beyond. From preserving the body with scientific precision to filling a tomb with magical spells and everyday comforts, the ancient Egyptians created one of the most elaborate and enduring belief systems surrounding death that the world has ever known. It was a testament to their profound belief in life's continuation and their unwavering hope for an eternal paradise. Their mummies and tombs are not just relics of the past, they're powerful messages about what it means to live, what it means to die, and the incredible human desire for immortality. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey into the ancient Egyptian afterlife. If you found this as fascinating as I do, please hit that like button and subscribe for more deep dives into history's greatest mysteries. What other ancient cultures' rituals should we explore next? Let me know in the comments below. Until next time, stay curious.